Good morning again, first graders. I hope you've been enjoying some of the read alouds from the different teachers, hearing different voices, seeing different faces. I might have one or two more big books left that I'll do, but eventually I'll get down to the smaller ones and you'll have to look at me while I'm reading. So we miss all of you guys. I hope you're outside playing. I hope you're doing a little bit of schoolwork too, so you're ready to go when we get back together. This book is called A House for Hermit Crab, and I picked this one because it goes through all the months of the year. And it's a little bit of science and it's a little bit of storytelling. So it's a little ELA. Um, it's a little morning meeting because we're going to have all the seasons and all the months. Look at his hermit crab. And what's he doing? He's climbing out of his shell because it's getting too small for him. Every time the shell gets too small, a hermit crab has to switch. Just like Mr. Krabs does sometimes in SpongeBob, right? He needs a new shell. Time to move, said Hermit Crab one day in January. I've grown too big for this little shell. He had felt safe and snug in his shell, but now, well, now it was too snug. Hermit Crab stepped out of the shell and onto the ocean floor. But it was frightening out in the open sea without a shell to hide in. What if a big fish comes along and attacks me, he thought. I must find a new house soon. Early in February, Hermit Crab found just the house he was looking for. It was a big shell and strong, and he moved right in, wiggling and waggling about inside to see how it felt. It felt just right. But it looks so, well, so plain, thought Hermit Crab. Well, it is plain, but I mean, he is a hermit crab. In March, Hermit Crab met some sea anemones. They swayed gently back and forth in the water. How beautiful you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to come and live in my house? It is so plain it needs you. I'll come, whispered a small sea anemone. Gently, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his shell. So now he's going to have some decoration on his shell, making it look beautiful, like his very own Christmas lights. In April, Hermit Crab passed a flock of starfish slowly moving along the seafloor. How handsome you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to decorate my house? I would, signaled a little sea star. I think this guy's raising his hand over here. Carefully, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his house. In May, Hermit Crab discovered some coral. They were hard and didn't move. How pretty you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to help make my house more beautiful? I would, creaked a crusty coral. Gingerly, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it on his shell. In June, Hermit Crab came to a group of snails crawling over a rock on the ocean floor. They grazed as they went, picking up algae and bits of debris, and leaving a neat path behind them. How tidy and hard-working you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to come over and help clean my house? I would, offered one of the snails. Happily, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it on his shell. His shell is getting very crowded. In July, Hermit Crab came upon several sea urchins. They had sharp, prickly needles. Ooh, how fierce you look, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to protect my house? I would, answered a spiky sea urchin. Gratefully, Hermit Crab picked it up in his claw and placed it near his shell. In August, Hermit Crabs and his friends wandered into a forest of seaweed. Oh, look, we're going to a new setting here. We're in the ocean, but inside the ocean, we're going into a bed of seaweed. It's so dark here, thought Hermit Crab. How dim it is, murmured the sea anemone. How gloomy it is, whispered the starfish. How murky it is, complained the coral. I can't see, said the snail. It's like nighttime, said the sea urchin. Pretty observant. In September, Hermit Crab spotted a school of lanternfish. Oh, how convenient. Darting through the dark water. How bright you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to light up our house? I would, replied one lanternfish, and swam over near the shell. Wow, he's all set now, huh? In October, Hermit Crab approached a pile of smooth pebbles. How sturdy you are, said Hermit Crab. Would you mind if I rearranged you? Not at all, answered the pebbles. Oh, wow, the pebbles talk too. Hermit Crab picked them up one by one with his claw and built a wall around his shell. Now my house is perfect, cheered Hermit Crab. But in November, Hermit Crab felt that his shell seemed a bit too small. You see, what happens with crabs is they just keep growing. And even though he has his shell perfect now, it's not going to be perfect forever. Little by little over the year, Hermit Crab had grown. Soon he would have to find another, bigger home. But he had come to love his friends. The sea anemone, the starfish, the coral, the sea urchin, the snail, the lanternfish, and even the smooth pebbles. They've been so good to me, thought Hermit Crab. They are like a family. How can I ever leave them? It must be difficult. In December, a smaller hermit crab passed by. I have outgrown my shell, she said. Would you know of a place for me? I have outgrown my house too, answered Hermit Crab. I must move on. You are welcome to live here, but you must promise to be good to my friends. Oh, I promise, said the little crab. What a deal. The following January, Hermit Crab stepped out, and the little crab moved in. Couldn't stay in that little shell forever, said Hermit Crab as he waved goodbye. The ocean floor looked wider than he had remembered, but Hermit Crab wasn't afraid. Soon he spied the perfect house. Look at how big that thing is. A big empty shell. It looked, well, a little plain. But sponges, he thought, barnacles, clownfish, sand dollars, electric eels. Oh, there are so many possibilities. I can't wait to get started. And so how about that? It looked like he was going to be sad because he lost his shell, and no, it turned out he just has a new project. And he can make his new shell beautiful. Let's bring this in here. What do we got here? We're going to talk about the same things that we talked about. We're going to talk about the characters in the story, the setting, and what happened in the beginning, middle, and end. Now, who was our main character? Who was our story about mostly, right? Our story was mostly about our friend the hermit crab, right? Yes, it was about his search. But what other characters were in this book? Can you think of some of the other animals and some of the other things that talk to hermit crab during the story? If you're sitting there watching this with someone, why don't you turn and talk to them? But if not, just think about some of the characters that you saw. We saw all sorts of different sea creatures, right? We saw sea anemones, some sea urchins, I believe, the spiky things, right? Even the rocks spoke, right? The shiny rocks. What else? Starfish, coral, right? The snail that was cleaning him. There was a lot of characters in this story. Now, where did this story take place? I did stop at one point and we talked about setting while we were reading, right? The whole story took place in one specific place, but there were different places within the story. What were some of the places that we visited? And after you think of some of the places that we went, how about when did this story take place? Did it happen all at the same time? So this story took place in the ocean for sure, right? But we went to the seaweed forest. And he had the space where he built his little house with the rocks. But did this story take place all at the same time? No, that's right. This story took place over a whole year. It started in January and then ended in January when he found his new shell. Now, what happened in the beginning of the story? In the beginning of the story, we realized that Hermit Crab's shell was just getting a little too small, right? And then throughout the whole middle of the story, what did he do during the whole middle of the story? Why don't you think about that for a second? Or tell somebody that you sit next to, if it's your brother or a sister or a grown-up that you're watching with. In the middle of the story, he decorated his house and made it beautiful and made it his favorite place to be. And then what happened at the end? Right? At the end of the story, it looked like it was going to be sad. It looked like he was going to have to give up his home. But it ended up being exciting and hopeful, didn't it? He gave it to a new friend. And the little crab had a beautiful new place to move into. And then Hermit Crab had a whole new adventure to go on as he had to decorate his new shell, right? All right, thanks for checking in, everybody. Please don't forget to visit Miss Sordillo's page and Miss Jodas's page. Miss Laudermilk's page, even Miss O'Donoghue has a page where you can go and do yoga and get some movement breaks. So check in and do some of this work, please, and please go outside, and we will see you all soon.